Hey guys, this is Travis Bogard at Above the Rest Training Systems in Cheyenne, Wyoming. In this video, we're going to discuss rooting for all of your compound exercises. But before we dive in, be sure to like the video, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell. You're not going to want to miss anything coming out of Above the Rest Training Systems. Okay. So when we talk about rooting, we got to understand why, right? When the brain goes to conduct the body into different movements, it's also constantly taking feedback in from the environment and the periphery of the body to let it know what our bodies can and can't do, and to down-regulate force if necessary. By rooting our feet and our legs and our hips and everything into the ground, we tell our brain that we are in the solid structural environment and we're ready to produce maximal force. Therefore, rooting is the process of setting our feet into the floor, getting our hips set and everything so that we are structurally sound as we go to perform these movements. So the entire process starts with the feet. So if we can get a shot down here of the feet, what we're gonna do is I wanna start by thinking about spreading my feet out as much as I possibly can. You see that? I'm really trying to get a big wide foot, and not just at the toes, but I'm also trying to spread my foot this way. There's not a lot in the body that does it, but if my brain cues it, I'm gonna get a big wide foot. From there, I'm actually gonna grab the floor as hard as I can with my whole foot. Now I wanna kind of think about my foot as like an eagle talon, right? We hear that analogy a lot. I have a point here, and a point back here, and I'm trying to bring all three of those points together as best I can with my foot. If you're doing this well, you should start to feel tightness radiating all the way up the leg, right? Now, another thing that you'll notice is that I'm building an arch here, right? That squeeze from this point to this point is actually bringing my foot together in such a way that I create a stable arch, which is putting my ankle directly over my midfoot. If I look at this from the back, you're actually gonna notice that my Achilles tendon is perfectly parallel with the floor when I'm rooted well with the foot, right? As opposed to collapsed, and the Achilles tendon kind of takes one of those curves, right? So again, we stretch the foot, eagle claw to bring the foot together, building that arch and stacking the ankle, right? So the next step. So once I have my feet rooted on both sides, the next step is gonna happen up here at the hips. Now we hear this analogy all the time, this cue, we want a screwdriver into the floor, right? But that screwdriver has to happen from the hips. I have to imagine that my entire leg is the screwdriver, my hip up here is the handle, and so as I screw my foot in, it's all happening up here. So as I root my foot, stretch, grab, squeeze, I'm then coming up to my hip and screwing my foot into the floor from there. And that's what's gonna get us the root into the floor. Now, common misconception, we'll hear us screw our feet into the floor, and so we focus on just twisting the feet. But if all I try to do is twist the feet, I'm just as likely to internally rotate the knee as I am to actually get myself rooted in well. So always remember, when we hear that screwdriver into the floor, we're thinking from the hips, not from the feet. Once we're there, this is the basics of rooting. This is our fundamental rooted position right here. Nice arches, nice ankle stacking, screwdriver hips. So now let's think, okay, if I'm doing it this way, this is how I'm gonna do it when I have both legs engaged at the same time. But what happens when I need to perform just a single leg movement, right? Everything relatively stays the same. I'm still going to spread feet, grab floor, build arch, screwdriver the leg in, but now I also have to consider this hip needs to stay kind of hiked in. This hip needs to stay hiked in so that my hips stay level to the floor. I don't want to let myself fall out too far, and I don't want to let myself rotate too far. I want to try to keep my hips relatively level to the floor. So there ends up being this stability pattern to the hip. So I'm still screwdriver, but I also have to keep in mind that staying well rooted into the floor on this hip, or with this leg, is going to mean keeping my hips relatively stable and relatively level to the floor. Okay, lastly, the last situation that we need to address when we talk rooting is when we may have to be on an elevated heel. So if we can look down here at the floor, there's gonna be situations where I need to root my foot into the floor, but my heel's off the ground. So all of a sudden, bringing all of this squeeze together becomes a little bit more difficult, and that rotation becomes a little bit more difficult to imagine. In these situations, everything stays the same. I'm just gonna lift that heel, and instead of thinking about eagle claw, I'm gonna focus primarily on my big toe. That big toe is gonna become the key. If you lift your heel off the ground and you try to dig that big toe into the ground hard, you should feel that kind of radiate all the way up into the glutes of the system, right? That's what we want. That's what we're keying in, as opposed to that where I start to feel it in the quads and up the front of the leg, right? Dig that big toe in, and that's where we're gonna find stability on these single leg movements with the heel elevated. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Remember, this is Travis Bogard at Above the Rest Training Systems in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Be sure to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell so you don't miss anything coming out of Above the Rest Training Systems.